Hey guys, it's Alaina. Today I wanted to show you a little tutorial about how I put texture inside of text on my iPad with Procreate. So I've done this on a number of my product cover images where you'll see that the text has got either a watercolor texture inside or gold or iridescent. And I will be showing this using my Iridescent and Holographic brush set for Procreate. And the link for that is in the description down below. You can use this with any other brush sets that you have as well, either mine or anyone else's, or just the standard brushes in Procreate. So the main point of this is just to put a texture, a colorful texture, inside of text and have it stand out. So let's go ahead and get started. So this font that I have here is called DM Serif Display, and it's a free Google font, which I will link to down below as well. And so this is what I've done with my iridescent brush set. I've just put a texture inside of these letters, so you can see it's got quite a lot. If you zoom in, there's a lot of different colors, and then when you zoom out, it just has kind of a textured effect. So I'll show you how to do this in a new canvas. So we're starting canvas, let's just do 3000 by 2000 pixels. And we're going to first add the text in white. So I'm going to my colors and double tapping over by the white to get a pure white. And over here on the gear icon, I'm going to add text. And so I'm just going to, I'm not really good at coming up with things to letter. So you guys are probably a lot better at that than me. But I'm just going to go ahead and write the word iridescent, just to show you how to do this. You actually can't see it because it's in white, but I'll just highlight it so we can see it. And up here where it says font, I'm going to choose my DM Serif Display and make it quite a lot bigger. So you need a pretty big, oops. Just gonna stretch it out so it'll fit. Okay. So you need it pretty big to do this. I'm just going to see if this is actually, I'll just turn off the background layer so we can see. It's not as big as I want, so I'm just going to make it even bigger. Stretch this out. Put it more in the center. Okay. I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller. I just want it to be kind of in the center of this page. So I'm going to turn on my snapping with the magnetics and snapping on, and then I'm going to center it. Okay. And oops. Okay. So now we're going to duplicate that. I'm not sure why I've got an extra layer down there. I'll just get rid of that. Okay. So now we have two of this white iridescent. And so I'm turning off the bottom layer, and we'll just keep that as the text itself in a text layer, because what we're going to do with this one is tap it again and then go to rasterize. So what this means is that this is an image now, it's not a text layer. And so if I tap in here, you can't edit that. Whereas if I turn that off and then go down to this other layer that is still as text, then you can go in here and you can edit it. So that's the difference. That's what happens when you rasterize it. So also what happens is that we can use it with a clipping mask, which is what we're going to do in a moment here. But first we're going to make a shadow. So I'm going to duplicate that rasterized layer again. And on the bottom one, I will tap it again, and then I will alpha lock on that, which means that you can't put any color other than where that it says iridescent. So now I'm going to my colors and selecting black, and I'm going to tap this bottom layer and then tap fill layer. So now that bottom layer is black and the top layer is white. I'm going to turn on my background layer again so that you can't see anything because the white is covering up the black. But what we're going to do while we're on this layer is we're going to tap it again, turn the alpha lock off. So now we can have pixels outside of that where it says iridescent. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this into a shadow. So going to the adjustments and the Gaussian blur on layer, we're going to slide so that you can see that the shadow starts to take form. This is at about 5%, and I think I'm just going to keep it at that. I don't want a super obvious shadow, just a little bit of a shadow. So I'll turn that off, and then we're going to move it over to the side just a bit so that it looks like the light source is coming from one side. So I tap the arrow, we're still on the shadow layer, and over to the side, I'm just going to tap a few times to move it over, and maybe once up as well. And so now it looks like the light is over here. Turning that off. Okay, so now we have the shadow done, and then we have the white text above it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add layers above this, and then we're going to put the texture inside of those layers. So plus for a new layer, and we want to make this everything in this new layer conform to this word iridescent below. So we're going to tap that layer again and tap clipping mask. So now you can see this little arrow has appeared, and this is anything in this layer will only show up where this word iridescent is. So now the fun begins. So I'm in my Iridescent Intense color palette, and I'm going to start out with this color, but I might move around to some different colors. And I will actually be using my AJ Holographic brush set for this. I probably should have written Holographic. But anyway, so we're going to be using these because these have a more wide variety of color than the iridescent, and that's the look that I want to go for. You could use these, you could really use any brush set to do what I'm about to do. And so the sky's the limit, really. But we're going to go ahead and start out with the brush called Kaleidoscope number 2, the holographic version, and it's right here. And with this brush, I'm just going to start filling the letters and see where it takes me. Wherever you use the brush over on top of itself, it gets shinier. So you can see that it gets a bit shinier when I do multiple layers on top. And you don't want to go too many layers on top of each other in the same layer, because then it can get a bit too washed out. So that's why we're going to add several layers, and just be careful as we go here. I'm just using short strokes here in order to have control over what I'm doing. You could also just cover the whole thing all at once, but I'm just trying to be a bit more controlled about it. So you can see there's some white peeking through, and I'm not caring a whole lot about that because I will be using more brushes on top of this. But at this point, I'm just kind of looking at the overall color distribution to see if I like that. And I can see there's a bit more green over here and some bits of green here, and then the rest of it is kind of pink, and I like that. I think that's going well. So that is just the first layer, and now I'm going to add a new layer on top of that. I'm still using the same brush, Kaleidoscope number 2, but I'm going to change color to this dark blue, and I'm going to just add a few more in this darker color, which means basically that we're just going to get some more intense, moody, dramatic colors from this. Oops. And I did forget to make that into a clipping mask as well. So I'm going to do that on each layer. I'm just going to make the brush a bit smaller for this. And with this layer, I'm just using a bit more of a back and forth motion so that I can have some kind of chunky looking bits on here. The idea with using the same brush in 2 different layers like this is just variety. I'm just trying to have a bit more variety behind this text. Now I'm adding a new layer and I'm turning that into a clipping mask as well. I'm going to go back to this green. Actually, I think I'm going to go with the blue again, the dark blue, and switch brushes to my foil number 2, still in the holographic folder. And I will just keep doing the same thing, adding little bits here and there and layering up this texture. And I'm not liking how this shadow is looking. It's a bit too harsh. So I'm taking a break from that and going back to my shadow layer, tapping the N on the shadow, and then taking it down, taking the opacity down to about 50%. And now I'm happier with how that looks. And so it's going to stop distracting me, and then I'll go back to the layer where I was before and just keep on working with that foil brush. Using the holographic brushes, you'll get, if you use not very much pressure, then you get more, like with this blue, you'll get more of a pinkish color. If you use a lot of pressure, you will get a bit more of a blue and green. Okay, so now that we've got these kind of mirror-like reflective looking pieces on top of the more colorful background, I just want to add one more layer in order to make this sort of a smoother transition between these harsh pieces and then the background. So I've added a new layer one more time, and it is a clipping mask. And I will go to still in my holographic folder, I'm choosing my Easter grass brush with this green. So I'm just going to use this brush to try and soften the edges of some of what I just did. At this point, I'm deciding that I think this layer would actually be better off underneath of that foil layer, so I'm just moving it underneath, and then I'm going to continue just softening these edges without drawing on top of the foil, because I really like how the foil looks, but I still want to have this Easter grass brush kind of smoothing things out underneath. Okay, so I think that I am done with this. And like I said, you can use this technique with any brushes that you have, and you can add a watercolor texture to your text like I've done on my watercolor brush set cover image. You can do this with gold or glitter. You can do this with regular paint strokes. You can even use a photo or anything like that as well. So this is a fun way to do text on Procreate, and I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial and got some ideas maybe from it. And if you like this content, please consider subscribing. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.